Oh, yeah, we're smoking right at Austinite. We're back. I'm David.
I'm Pamela.
This is the Austinite Podcast. We're your hosts. We've got a super special guest today. We've got a comedian, podcaster, Latina in cannabis. We got Mala Munoz. How you doing, Mala?
I'm good. I'm chilling. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. If you could quickly just give us a quick introduction of yourself.
My name is Mala Munoz. I'm a podcaster. I'm the creator and host of Marijuanera, a podcast for potheads. And I'm also a comedian. I'm a writer. I also co-host a show called Locatora Radio, a radiophonic novella for iHeart with my co-host Dios FM. So I'm in
Busy
town.
girl.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of work. Mala's actually in Austin for her comedy aspects right now. She's down here for the LA TAKEOVER comedy show that's going down tonight when we're recording this. Got a whole bunch of dope LA comedians. Is it your first time out here in Austin?
My first time in Austin. Yeah, not my first time in Texas though. I drove through Amarillo once with my
What do you think
grandma.
about
Well, I like Texas. Like I like the desert. I like the Southwest. I like the barbecue. I like the cowboys. Like I like all that shit. And so we went to one of those, like, the Big Texan was the name of the steakhouse, and it was one of those places where, like, it's the biggest steak on earth, and you have to eat it under a certain amount of time, and if you win, they put your picture up. Like, it was like that. Yeah. And then I went to New Braunfels for a couple days, like a few years ago, for podcasting stuff. But first time in Austin. Yeah.
So how would you compare performing in LA to performing in Austin? How are the comedy scenes different?
Well, I feel like we're just barely scratching the surface out here. There's a lot of comedians and a lot of mics and a lot of shows. Our first day when we landed, me and Stevana Delgado, shout out Stevana, we co-host at the Chatterbox together in Covina. She's also on the show tonight, the LA TakeOver show. But me and Stevana went to the mothership, and the other guys that were here with, the other comedians, Daniel Alvarez and Frank Ulloa and Daniel Cabral and Greg Sanchez and Alex Durazo. It's a bunch of LA comedians. We all went to the mothership. We all signed up for the early mic. My name got pulled, so I went up at the Rogan's mic in the little boy room, and that was chill. And then we all tried to sign up for Kill Tony, and none of our names got pulled. It was crazy.
Yeah, I haven't been since they moved it, but we went at their old venue, and it was awesome. It was a crazy show, but I know everybody always wants to get called when they go.
So it's just, what I'm learning is the comedy scene here is like exploding. Yeah,
it's all new.
Yeah, a lot of people are moving over here, and a lot of people are trying to jump on that comedy game. Yeah.
What got you into performing comedy?
I've always liked performing. I used to do theater and dance and choir and such as a kid and in school. And with the podcasting, it just kind of like started going hand in hand. A lot of comics have podcasts. And I decided to start doing open mics during the pandemic. I went to the Chatterbox in Covina, and I started getting up, and Steve Hernandez booked me on my first show out there. And then I just started doing more mics and getting booked on more shows. And if they invite me somewhere, I go and I perform, and here we are. Now we're in Austin.
Dope. Yeah, just kind of domino effect. Let it keep on rolling down. How long was that? How long have you been doing comedy?
It's been 2 years now doing stand-up. Yeah. But when I would do like more theater and musicals and such. Like I would always get cast in like the comedic role. Okay. I was always getting cast in like comedic parts. So like on the acting side of things, I'm more of like a comedic actress also. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. You were just kind of the clap clown vibe, just kind of making everybody laugh.
I see that it's so funny because that title was like never applied to me, but me and my little friends were the ones like getting into hijinks and doing and saying funny things, and mostly making the teachers laugh or making the ones immediately around us laugh. I wasn't into like distracting the whole class, but I would get my little quips in, here and there. And what I would do is, in high school, we would have these morning meetings like in the auditorium where the entire high school is there, and you could go up to the mic and make an announcement like, oh, drama club or speech and debate, we're meeting at lunch. But I would go up there and fucking tell jokes and just like take over the mic, and I would turn my announcements into like I'm actually telling jokes, and I would get laughs. And like I didn't realize what I was doing. I just was like, oh, I have this thing I want to say, because I think this sounds like something that would be funny, you know?
That is awesome. That's crazy. Yeah, I could see how it would trickle down into that. But kind of shifting gears into your podcast game in the podcast for potheads, Marijuanera. Can you tell us how that got started up?
Yeah. Forgive me. Not me coughing.
We're dabbing a little bit. Shout out to Puffco. We got some Proxies and some Peak Pros.
Yeah. And I'm more of a flower girl. Like, I don't really dab like that. So this is a treat, you know? So I've been podcasting with Locatora Radio since 2016 with Diosa. And then in the pandemic, we decided to turn the podcast into a production house. So we became not only Locatora Radio, but Locatora Productions LLC. So under that production umbrella, I launched Marijuanera, a podcast for potheads, and I solo host that show. And I wanted that to be my comedy cannabis show where I can smoke. I'm marketing to stoners. I'm speaking to stoners. I'm interviewing stoners. But I'm also getting high myself and then doing like skits and sketches and voices and things like that. So we're on season 3 now, and you can listen everywhere.
That's dope. Yeah, I was checking it out, and I saw that theme song. It's crazy. How did that come about?
The theme song, I love my theme song. I love my jingle. It's sort of like reminiscent of The Nanny. And that was kind of like the jumping off point for me was The Nanny. And I rewrote the lyrics to make it about me being like this LA roller skater, stoner, depressed girl who's going to like crack some jokes and smoke some weed right now on this show. And my friend, so I wrote the lyrics and I sent like a voice memo to my friend Crisol. I'm like, I think it should sound something like this. And I think when I did it, it was more like, she's a depressed 20-something with a college degree. And Crisol changed it to make it more original. She like rewrote the music. So for copyright reasons, you know. And then Crisol sang it, and Brian Gasso and the Brown Boys played the instruments on it and mixed and mastered it. And now they do all the music for my podcast. So I'll write like little lyrics, I'll write like a little jingle, and I'm like, I think this is how it should sound. And then they make it, and then it's on the show.
That's dope. Yeah, it sounds like a natural like comedy, or it's a natural like music. I feel like intention almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did you get into like the cannabis aspect of it? Or, like why cannabis?
I love weed. I've been smoking weed for a long time and like smoking heavy. And in the pandemic, I was smoking every day, you know, all day, every day. I still am, but I was like extra, you know? And I remember just thinking like, I want to make a podcast for potheads. Like very simple. Like I like doing this. I could sit here all day and smoke. I might as well lay down some audio. Let me lay down a track while I'm sitting here.
Record
you know?
These thoughts. Yeah. Right? That's awesome. But I guess just in general, Locatora Radio, how did that get started up?
So me and Diosa were following each other on Instagram and Twitter for a long time before we ever met in person. And we're both from LA, but we didn't meet until like years later. And there was this like meetup that was being put on. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, like every Latina in LA with an Instagram handle is going to be here. This was like 2015. So I went, and sure enough, there she was. And we recognized each other from online. We started hanging out, and our little group of friends that we met that night in the women's bathroom, we started calling ourselves the Mommy Collective. And really, we were just going out and partying and getting fucked up, but we were the Mommy Collective. And then one day, Diosa hits me up, and she's like, want to start a podcast? And I'm always down for whatever. Like, I'm always like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. You know, so I said yes, and we just started, and we just didn't stop. We just kept going. Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah, that's awesome to never turn back like that.
Mm-hmm. Is there any common myths about being a comedian or just working in the podcast and all that?
Oh, interesting. You know, I think that there's still a little bit of people are like, oh, another podcast? Like, oh, great. Just what the world needs, more podcasts. But it's like nobody ever says like, oh, like, I don't know, like another movie, you know, like, oh, they're making more movies. Oh, God, enough, you know, like. we're always down for more movies.
Always down for another Netflix special or something, right? Yeah. That's
You
true.
know, like, oh, another TV show? Golly. Like, no, we want more things. So that's how I feel about podcasting. Like, of course, people are starting podcasts. People should be starting podcasts. I think that's cool.
Yeah. And it's a lot of different ideas. That's what I love about just the internet in general, that it's easy, like for future generations, they're not even going to consider when so much information wasn't at the touch of your fingertips, you know? So it's just crazy to think about. But if you had to pick, if it's meeting people, if it's live performances, traveling, what's your favorite part of your career?
Right now, I'm loving the traveling. Like, this is the first time I've really started traveling for comedy. I was traveling for the podcast. Me and Diosa would go to universities, and like the Latino Center would fly us out, or their Latinos Unidos, or their, Chicano studies. And we would do like podcasting workshops. But then with the pandemic, we stopped travel. And so this year is like, this is my first time out of state for comedy. And it's like the greatest. It's so fun. Because what happens is, as you are going to shows and you're going to mics, and you end up performing in front of the same people over and over again in your hometown, even a hometown as big as LA, right? So to come out and have fresh faces changes the whole experience. Like, it makes it's just fresher. It's a whole new take on my own jokes that I've been telling, for, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Different audiences.
I didn't know it's your first time performing out of state.
yeah.
That's awesome. Wow, I'll get that little. Hey. Looking forward to tonight, LA Takeover comedy show. So if you had to pick something, what would be your least favorite part?
Dang. It's so hard. It can be so hard to get stage time. In LA, it's hard to get stage time. There's a lot of comics, and there's not as many stages as there are comedians. And then it's hard to find places with real people, real audience, and not just other comics. And I think here, because there's so many comics and the scene is growing, like it's also hard to get stage time here. As we've been learning, we've been finding out, it's hard to get stage time. So the fact that Austinite is providing a stage for us and an audience for us, like, and we're gonna come here and it's gonna be like a sold out show, like for comics like us, that's invaluable. Like, that means everything. So shout out Austinite.
Sold out show tonight.
Oh, shout out y'all. Y'all are the headlines on the faces, or the faces on the poster that sold that thing out. So really shout out to y'all for coming out. What would you say? Have you ever performed at like another cannabis themed comedy show, or is this your first one?
I have. In LA, it's pretty popular, and I run my own cannabis comedy show called Jokes and Tokes.
Okay, go.
Yeah. For the past 2 years, I've done 6 months of shows at the Artistry Studio Lounge in West Hollywood, because they have a consumption lounge there at the dispensary, and they also do like drag brunch and, jazz night. And they reached out to me because of Marijuanera, because of the podcast, and they asked if I would produce a stand-up night there. So that's Jokes and Tokes. Nice. It's really fun. So these comics have performed at Jokes and Tokes, most of them, or at another weed show in LA. So we're ready for a stoned audience.
I'm good. I'm glad. The reason I ask is because I just wanted to know, what are your thoughts on like the combination of comedy and cannabis, and how they go hand in hand in some ways?
I think there's a natural relationship and overlap there. I mean, of course, we have so many like comedy movies have revolved around cannabis, I mean, like Cheech and Chong, the Friday movies, like the list goes on. And in music too, like Willie Nelson, and even now Caliuchis and everybody else who like is combining weed with their art. However, live, it's interesting because drunk audiences are so loud that they're disruptive sometimes. They're so rambunctious. But stoned audiences can be so quiet that it's unnerving for the comics. And sometimes at Jokes and Tokes, I'll tell my comics who are so used to getting these huge, big laughs, and then the stoned audience is like...
Yeah.
That's something I've noticed here. It takes a comedian. It takes a real comedian to entertain some high people. Because I've seen good ones and I've seen bad ones. They're like, that joke hits every time. I'm like, yeah, they're probably a couple cran vodkas deep or something like that. But when they're a couple blunts or joints deep,
they're chill.
You're going to have to hit them with a deep one. And it's going to have to be easy to follow. It's going to have to check a lot of boxes. But I'm glad. I'm looking forward to a lot of y'all's performances tonight.
And then, so on tonight's, mentioning tonight, I know you already mentioned some, but do you want to go ahead and highlight again the comedians are going to be here tonight performing?
Yeah, we have a great lineup. And it just so happened, like, so I met all of these comics at Chatterbox in Covina. That's where I open mic, and there's a Sunday show that we get booked on, and I met all these guys there, starting with, and so in that vein, sorry, I'm like, I've been hitting everything.
It's all good. It's all
In that vein, we decided kind of like loosely, like, oh, let's all go to Austin. And then Estella reached out, Estella Castro, shout out. And Estella was like, hey, do a show at Austinite. It's going to be dope. There's so many of you coming from LA. You might as well just do your own lineup, you know? So that's how it came together. So it's Alex Durazo, Greg Sanchez, Jackson Lind, Frank Ulloa, Daniel Cabral, Stewana Delgado, Daniel Alvarez, who's here, and me, and hosted by Austin's very own Aldo Caldo.
Yes.
Shout out Aldo. Shout out Daniel.
And you met Aldo for the first time?
Yes, I met Aldo at the mothership. Estella and Castro picked us up and immediately handed us joints the second we touched down.
That's how they do it.
Yeah,
That's literally how I met them too, almost to the T. Yeah.
and they got us straight to the mothership, and we went and we got in line and we signed up, and they took care of us. And then I met Aldo, all that, and that same night it was chill.
He's usually all around everywhere, but it's good when you can catch him and kind of pick his brains a little bit. But if you had to pick some people, I know you roll around with a lot of cool people, a whole bunch of dope comedians. Who are your either 420 or comedian inspirations that you have that kind of inspire you in your work?
Sorry,
Dab in a little bit.
a lot. Okay, so you know what? Obviously, Cheech Brain, who, one of the reasons why I love Cheech is, and I mean, Tommy Chong is amazing. Both of them are great. But Cheech Marin in particular has like this real focus and emphasis on like Chicano art in general, and doesn't want his legacy to be only as like, oh, he did stoner movies. So like he launched the Chicano Art Museum in, I want to say Riverside. It's called the Cheech. And yeah, because he's been amassing his own private collection of Chicano art for years. And like years ago, I went to a whole exhibition at LACMA, the LA County Museum of Art, and it was Cheech Marin's personal Chicano art collection on display.
Wow, I had no idea he did so much for the Latin community. That's awesome. That is awesome.
And he still acts, he still performs, and like, I mean, he literally just opened a museum to Chicano art, which I think is sick. So he's one of my favorites always. And he and Tommy Chong have a weed podcast together. So they're still in the culture, they're still doing the weed stuff. But funny, I wanted to like interview him, and the older comics like Cheech and Chong actually really don't like talking to comedians.
Okay.
Like they don't really like being interviewed by comedians because there's a certain amount of like anxiety around like, oh, the whole like getting canceled and saying the wrong thing and the jokes that they make and being on podcasts. So I just thought that was very fascinating.
Crazy, yeah. It's a simple answer, but it was very justified. That's awesome. Cheech Marin.
Yeah,
okay,
of Cheech and Chong. Yeah.
So how was your first experience with cannabis? Do you remember it? Is it a notable one?
Yeah, I talk about this on Marijuanera, actually, on episode 1, getting high, kissing girls. And that's exactly what happened and what I did. Me and my friends had this sleepover, and you know, I had this one friend and her mom was very like, as long as you do it in the house, girls. Yeah. As long as it's in the house, it's okay. And so what we did, there were 4 of us, and we had a sleepover and got a big handle of Patron and killed it between the 4 of us. But we also had weed, and we were like determined to smoke because we were like, we're gonna drink and we're gonna smoke. We're gonna get fucked up.
A night full of experiments.
Mm-hmm. So we smoked, we were crossfaded as hell, and then we all made out with each other. And then like knocked out. And then we were so cruda in the morning, and her mom was so cute because she came and brought us breakfast in bed. She, you know what I mean? She knew.
Yeah, I've never heard any first experience like that. That's definitely a unique one. That's awesome.
It was wholesome.
I see it.
And then I think you already kind of mentioned this, but your favorite way to consume?
You know, I've always been like a flower girl.
Yeah.
I like a pipe. I like a pre-roll. I can do blunts. I like hitting the bong. But I also love, like, in LA, you know, I like to be very mobile with my weed. Like, I like to walk my dog while I smoke. I like to bop around my apartment, you know, while I smoke. I like to go out to the beach and roller skate while I smoke, you know. And so pre-rolls are like my go-to.
Yeah. In a pinch, they always work. Yeah.
Always.
Yeah. So what's next for you, Mala?
Oh my God, so many things. More stand-up comedy. Hopefully, more on the road. I'm going to be in Modesto, California, end of July. I'm performing at the State Theater in Modesto. I have another big venue that I can't announce yet, but that's coming in August. They haven't shared the lineup yet, but at such a time. Follow me at Mala_Munoz, and I post all my shows.
Announcements coming soon, It sounds like, yeah.
Yeah, we have more podcasts coming out. So season 8 of Locatora Radio, we're recording now, and that's coming out, and you can listen on the iHeart Radio app. That's coming out mid-July. And then we're launching a whole new show with iHeart, and that's announcement soon to come. Wow. That's going to be an iHeart original Locatora co-production. Yeah.
That is awesome. A lot to look forward to.
So, is there anything that you wish we asked that we haven't touched on yet?
Oh.
Or do you have any questions for us?
Yes.
Actually, yes. That's better. I do have, what even is there left for me to say? You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. So I would like to know, when you guys smoke weed, what are you usually doing? Is it a concentrated sitting down smoking now activity, or do you combine it with other things?
Well, I feel like for me, honestly, it's usually here. I don't know. It just happens that way. You know, we're constantly doing events. So I feel like it's not like specifically sitting down. It's like kind of also, like you said, moving around or like working. I'm very productive stoner.
Hell yeah.
I would agree. I would say that about both of us. I think it's best. I like to do it when I need like a step back almost, just because we're doing so much creative stuff here, from designing flyers and creating new product labels. It's like sometimes you just get in your head when you're looking at the same logo for like 6 hours and you're like tweaking the little things. It's like, well, maybe I should just take a little dab real quick for like 2 minutes and kind of reset. So I kind of like it as a fresh start, kind of like a palate cleanser in a way. So
absolutely. Yeah. Do you feel like you're dispelling myths and misconceptions about stoners just with the work that you do?
Oh yes, especially I feel like here in Texas, we were talking to like a family friend like literally yesterday, and she was even saying like she doesn't like to come around too much because of the stigma.
Oh.
And like she does come around, but like for huge events where, you know, people are probably taking pictures and stuff like that.
So like if her coworkers saw, like a whole rabbit hole chain.
So it's like, I think we definitely are trying to break those stigmas here in Texas. And yeah, so hopefully, I mean, we do create like a safe space for people who don't have that. A lot of people here in Texas are like, where do I smoke? Or like, don't want to smoke in the car. I mean, you know, don't want to get caught up in the car, or like just stuff like that. So then, you know, you come here and it's like kind of like a safe spot.
Yeah. As a Californian, I didn't realize there was so much cannabis in Texas, in Austin.
Yes.
I mean, I knew, but I didn't realize.
Yeah, it's just crazy, you know, if you just tell the lawmakers that they think there's none, you know, they think they're keeping it out. And still kind of here. So if we just had it more regulated.
Here and not regulated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of question marks. Shout out to California though. Y'all are cool. Y'all are doing it right. We're trying to figure it out here in Austin and in Oklahoma, but southern states are a little bit different.
Yeah.
In the whole thing, but we're making it work.
It seems like you're making it more than work. Like it's you guys are thriving here. I saw your Instagram and all the events you do. Yeah. And the community you're building.
This one's going to be a fun one too, and we're glad we finally got you on this podcast. Yeah, we have an honorary question that we ask everybody that we interview.
Ooh.
A couple people, dead or alive, maybe one person. Who's in your dream blunt rotation dream sesh?
Oh my God. So I am a big fan of Mae West. Okay. And long deceased, but she was like a very iconic actress, but she was a comic. She was a comedic actress, and she was like making movies, forgive me if I'm getting these years wrong, but like literally in the 20s and 30s, but all the way up until like the 60s and stuff. Like she had like a long career, and she was doing really cool shit because she was writing her own scripts. She was writing her own movies and starring in them and directing them. And she was in charge. And she was a very global superstar back in the day. And she was just kind of like known for being super sexual with her comedy and her movies. They were all like really kind of dirty but hilarious, and she gave herself like these nasty like jokes and one-liners. So I don't know, I just think she was a cool chick, and she was large and in charge and hilarious. And I don't know,
especially for the time too.
Yeah, it sounds like she's somebody that's still alive right now. That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah, and you maybe kind of don't even see that right now, but or in different ways, right? But anyway, so love her. Would love. I don't know if she consumed, but I would love to smoke with her. Also, like Lucille Ball of I Love Lucy. Yeah. I think that she would be a hoot.
Another early trailblazer, especially for like film and women in television. I agree. That'd be awesome. Yeah. Every time we interview somebody, I'm like, yeah, that's a good one. I'd smoke with them.
And then like probably Dolly Parton.
Oh my gosh, that would be so cool.
That would be awesome.
And you know, I don't know if Selena would smoke. I don't think. But
some convincing, you know.
If she were down, I would smoke with her, obviously.
In today's climate with regulated cannabis, you know, that you can get a test and a COA for, I think anybody could be convinced.
You know, it's not as scary as it once was to people, I think. I like to think that, like, in an alternate reality, if she had survived, she would have, like, rebelled against Abraham, her father, and she would have moved to California and started smoking weed and, like, gained munchy weight. You know what I mean?
There's a universe where that's happening. That is happening right now.
The Selena-verse.
Well, thank you so much, Mala, for being on the Austinite podcast. We really do appreciate it. One more time, could you let all our listeners know where they can find your work?
Yes, you can follow me at Mala_Munoz, and then you can follow Locatora Radio at Locatora_Radio, and listen to the podcast everywhere. Marijuanera, a podcast for potheads on all streaming platforms. We have a website, locatoradio.com.
Shout out.